I used to think my grandma Aurora was an open book, a simple melody played on a well-worn piano. Her life, as I perceived it, was a comforting rhythm of garden tending, Sunday suppers, and quiet evenings spent knitting by the fireplace. Her hands, gnarled and strong from years of work, were always busy, always creating, always offering solace. She had these eyes, the color of a summer sky after a gentle rain, that seemed to hold nothing but kindness and unwavering love. When I was a child, those eyes were my safe harbor, my refuge from scraped knees and whispered fears. I'd sit at her feet, mesmerized by the stories she'd spin, tales of mischievous squirrels and talking flowers, always delivered in that soft, lilting voice that could soothe the most restless soul. Growing up, I believed I knew her intimately. I knew the way she liked her tea, weak with a single drop of honey, the exact shade of blue she preferred for her aprons, cornflour, always cornflour, and the secret ingredient in her apple pie, a pinch of cardamom, whispered only to me. I knew her laughter, a warm, bubbling sound that chased away shadows, and I knew the gentle squeeze of her hand that could communicate more than words ever could. But now, looking back, I realize how little I truly understood the depths of the woman I loved so dearly. It wasn't until after she was gone, after the house felt strangely emptied and silent, after the scent of lavender sachets began to fade, that I stumbled upon the truth. It was during the arduous task of sorting through her belongings, a process both heartbreaking and strangely comforting, that I found it. I was in the attic, a dusty, forgotten space, filled with cobwebs and forgotten treasures. Sunlight streamed through a single grimy window, illuminating swirling motes of dust that danced in the air like tiny spirits. I was searching for her old photo albums, hoping to find a glimpse of her younger self, a tangible connection to the woman I missed so profoundly. Instead, tucked away in the back of a heavy wooden chest, beneath a pile of moth-eaten quilts, I found a box. It was small, no bigger than a loaf of bread, made of dark, intricately carved wood, the kind that hinted at a history far older than my own. The wood felt cool and smooth beneath my fingertips, almost as if it were breathing. The box was locked, secured with a small, tarnished brass clasp. I rummaged through the attic, searching for a key, but found nothing. Finally, with a deep breath and a silent apology to my grandmother, I carefully pried the clasp open. The wood creaked in protest, releasing the musty scent it filled the air, a smell of aged paper and forgotten secrets. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a diary, not the kind with whimsical flowers on the cover or a playful lock and key. This was different. This was a thick, leather-bound volume, its cover worn smooth with age and use. The leather with a deep, rich brown, almost black in places, and the pages were filled with handwriting in faded ink. The edges of the pages were brittle and yellowed, threatening to crumble at the slightest touch. I lifted the diary from the box, my hands trembling. It felt heavy, not just in weight, but in the weight of unspoken stories, of hidden emotions, of a life lived beyond the gentle facade she had always presented to the world. As I held it, I could almost feel her presence, a faint whisper of lavender and something else, something wilder, something I couldn't quite place. The scent emanating from the diary was intoxicating, a blend of old paper, dry flowers, and a faint, almost metallic tang. It was this smell of history, of secrets, of a life lived fully and perhaps secretly. I ran my fingers across the cover, tracing the worn leather, feeling the indentations of words pressed into the surface over decades. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just a diary. It was a portal, a doorway into a part of my grandmother's life that I never knew existed. The grandmother I thought I knew, the gentle, loving woman who baked apple pies and told bedtime stories, seemed to fade away, replaced by a figure shrouded in mystery. A woman with a past far more complex and intriguing than I could have ever imagined. I opened the diary carefully, my breath catching in my throat. The first page was dated 1938. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, and undeniably Aurora's. But the words were a revelation. They spoke of a world on the brink of war, of a forbidden love, of sacrifices made in the face of unimaginable hardship. They spoke of a woman I had never met, a woman of courage, passion, and unwavering determination. I read the first few entries, my eyes widening with each passing word. I learned of a hidden life, a life filled with danger and intrigue, a life that had been carefully concealed beneath the surface of normalcy. I discovered a secret Aurora, a woman who had navigated treacherous waters, a woman who had faced unimaginable challenges with grace and resilience. The shock of this discovery reverberated through me. It was as if the foundation of my understanding of my grandmother had suddenly shifted, revealing a hidden landscape beneath. How could I have known her for so long and yet known so little? How could she have kept these secrets hidden for so many years? As I continued to read, I began to understand. The diary was a testament to her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to protecting those she loved. It was a story of forbidden love, of wartime sacrifice, of a legacy that echoed across generations. It was a story that needed to be told. This diary, I realized, wasn't just a collection of words on paper. It was a key to unlocking the secrets of my family's past. There was a map, guiding me through a labyrinth of hidden truths and unspoken emotions. It was a treasure, a priceless inheritance that had been entrusted to me. And as I held it in my hands, I knew that I had a responsibility to share this story, to bring my grandmother's hidden life into the light. It wouldn't be easy. There would be pain, there would be heartache, but there would also be love, hope, and ultimately a deeper understanding of the woman who had shaped my life in so many ways. I closed the diary gently, my heart filled with a mixture of grief, curiosity, and a profound sense of purpose. I knew that this journey would be long and arduous, but I was ready to embark on it. I was ready to delve into the secrets of my grandmother's past, to uncover the truth behind her hidden life, and to share her story with the world. The secrets within these pages are powerful, and some of them are painful. But they are also a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us across generations. They are the story of my grandma Aurora, a woman who is far more extraordinary than I ever imagined. And now I feel compelled to share it with you. If you'd like to walk this path with me, to uncover the secrets hidden within these pages, to learn about the woman who is my grandma Aurora, subscribe and stay close. We have a long and emotional journey ahead of us. The scent of lavender and sun-baked earth clung to the pages, a ghost of Aurora's presence that filled the room. As I turned the brittle, yellowed page, the neat, looping script beckoned me into a world I thought I knew, but suddenly felt impossibly distant from. It wasn't just words on paper. It was a doorway. Willow Creek. The name itself seemed to whisper secrets on the wind. In my mind's eye, it wasn't just a place on a map. It was a feeling, a memory pressed between the pages of my heart. It existed, not in the harsh glare of modern life, but in the soft, sepia-toned hues of the late 1930s. A time before everything changed. Willow Creek wasn't much to look at, really. Just a smattering of houses huddled around a general store, a church with a steeple that pointed towards the heavens like a hopeful finger, and a one-room schoolhouse where Mrs. Abernathy, a woman with eyes as bright as polished pebbles and a heart as vast as the prairie sky, instilled in us a love for stories and a healthy respect for grammar. But it was everything to me. Our farm, the Anderson farm, lay a mile or so outside of town, nestled in a valley where the Willow Creek, a lazy, meandering stream, lived up to its name. Willows wept along its banks, their slender branches trailing in the cool water, offering shade to the sun-dappled minnows that darted amongst the pebbles. The air there was thick with the scent of hay and wildflowers, the buzzing of bees a constant comforting hum. My father, Samuel, was a man of the earth. His hands, calloused and strong, knew the rhythm of the seasons. He could coax life from the most stubborn soil, and his face, etched with the map of a life lived outdoors, was a testament to his unwavering dedication. He was a quiet man, not given to grand pronouncements or displays of affection, but his love was a steady, dependable presence, as constant as the sunrise. My mother, Eleanor, was the heart of our home. Her laughter was like birdsong, filling the small farmhouse with warmth and light. She possessed a gentle strength, a resilience that saw us through the lean years and the unexpected hardships. Her hands were always busy, kneading dough, mending clothes, or tending to her beloved rose bushes that climbed the trellis by the front porch, their blooms a riot of color against the weathered wood. I was Aurora, the middle child, caught between the bravado of my older brother Thomas and the ethereal beauty of my younger sister, Lily. Thomas, with his head full of dreams of flight, spent hours poring over tattered magazines, his eyes tracing the lines of biplanes and fighter jets. He was restless, yearning for something beyond the horizon, a feeling I understood all too well. He'd spend hours building model airplanes in the barn, the scent of glue and balsa wood clinging to his clothes. He was determined to be a pilot, to soar above the clouds and see the world from a different perspective. Lily, on the other hand, was a creature of poetry and whispers. She saw magic in the ordinary, finding beauty in the smallest of things, a dewdrop clinging to a spider's web, the intricate patterns of a butterfly's wing. She'd spent hours lost in her own world, scribbling verses in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. She saw the world through a different lens, a lens tinted with wonder and imagination. I loved them both fiercely, even though I often felt like I didn't quite fit in. Thomas was so sure of his path, so driven. Lily was so effortlessly artistic, so connected to something I couldn't quite grasp. I was just Aurora. I loved the farm. I loved my family, but there was a part of me that yearned for something more, something I couldn't quite define. Our days were filled with the rhythm of farm life, waking before dawn to the crowing of the rooster, helping with the chores, milking the cows, feeding the chickens, weeding the garden. The work was hard, but it was honest. And there was a certain satisfaction in seeing the fruits of our labor, in knowing that we were providing for ourselves, relying on our own strength and ingenuity. Evenings were a time for stories. After supper, we'd gather around the crackling fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. My father would tell tales of his own childhood, of the hardships he faced and the lessons he'd learned. My mother would read aloud from her well-worn copy of Little Women, her voice soft and soothing. Thomas would regale us with stories of daring pilots in far-off lands, fueling my own sense of wanderlust, and Lily would share her poems, her words painting vivid pictures in our minds. Sometimes, after everyone else had gone to bed, I would sneak out onto the porch and lie on the swing, gazing up at the stars. The night sky above Willow Creek was a canvas of infinite possibilities, a vast expanse dotted with shimmering pinpricks of light. I would imagine myself traveling to those distant worlds, exploring uncharted territories, discovering secrets hidden in the cosmos. I knew, deep down, that Willow Creek couldn't contain me forever. It was a beautiful place, a safe place, a place I would always cherish. But it wasn't the only place. There was a world out there waiting to be explored, and I, Aurora Anderson, was determined to explore it. That feeling, that quiet yearning, was always there, a subtle undercurrent beneath the surface of my everyday life. It wasn't rebellion, not exactly. More like a seed planted deep within my soul, waiting for the right moment to sprout. A seed watered by stories of adventure, by glimpses of the world beyond Willow Creek, by the unwavering belief that there was something more waiting for me. It was a peaceful existence, a simple life, a life that, in retrospect, seems almost idyllic. But even in the heart of that tranquility, a storm was brewing. A storm that would shatter the peace of Willow Creek and change our lives forever. The storm that would test our strength, our resilience, and our love for one another. A storm that would force me to confront my own fears and discover the woman I was meant to be. And I, young Aurora, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lay ahead, continued to dream of stars and faraway lands, of a life beyond the rolling hills of Willow Creek. I didn't know it then, but those dreams would soon become a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable adversity. They were the fuel that would propel me forward, even when the world seemed to be crumbling around me. They were the promise of a future that despite all the challenges to come, I refused to give up on. Because even in the darkest of times, hope, like a tiny seed, can still take root and blossom into something beautiful and strong. And sometimes, that's all we need to keep going. The honeyed light of those Willow Creek days, the lazy hum of bees in the lavender, it all began to fade. Not with a bang, but a slow, insidious dimming, like a favorite photograph left too long in the sun. At first, it was just whispers. The radio, once a source of evening entertainment with its silly comedies and crooning singers, started to crackle with news from far away. Places with names that sounded like thunder rolling across the ocean. Poland, France, England. Distant lands filled with troubles that seemed, at first, as remote as the stars. My father, Thomas, he listened with a different ear than the rest of us. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed, a strange light in his eyes. He wasn't afraid, not like Mama. He saw opportunity. This war, he'd say, more to himself than anyone else, this war will change everything. He talked about advancements, about industry booming, about the chance to make something of himself. He was restless, always looking beyond the horizon. Willow Creek, with its predictable seasons and gentle rhythms, suddenly felt too small for him. Mama, on the other hand, she grew quiet. Her laughter, once so bright and frequent, became a precious thing, reserved for special moments. She'd clutch my hand a little tighter when the news came on, her eyes searching mine, trying to find reassurance where there was none to be found. She worried about Thomas, of course, but she worried even more about my younger brother, Samuel. He was still a boy, full of mischief and dreams of baseball, but Mama saw the shadow of the future looming over him, a future she desperately wanted to protect him from. And me, I was caught between them, between Thomas's ambition and Mama's fear. The world which had seemed so simple and safe was suddenly fracturing. The stories I read in my books, the romantic notions I held about love and adventure, felt suddenly naive, almost foolish. The war wasn't just a distant rumble anymore. It was a knot tightening in my stomach, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that colored everything. I started to pay attention to the faces of the people in Willow Creek, noticing the lines of worry etched around their eyes, the forced smiles they offered each other in the market. Even the laughter sounded different, a little brittle, a little too loud. Letters started arriving too. Letters from cousins who had moved to the cities, letters from uncles working in factories. They spoke of rationing, of shortages, of a growing sense of unease. They spoke of young men enlisting, of propaganda posters on every corner, of a world consumed by something bitter, something darker than anything Willow Creek had ever known. I remember one afternoon, sitting on the porch swing with Mama, shelling peas. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and the sun was warm on my skin. It should have been a perfect day, but the radio was on inside, droning on about battles and casualties. Mama sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's all so far away, Aurora," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But it doesn't feel far away, does it?" I shook my head, unable to speak. It felt as if the world was shrinking, the oceans were narrowing, and the war was creeping closer, inch by inch, until it would finally reach our doorstep. Then Elias arrived. He came on a Tuesday, I think. The day was overcast, the sky a dull gray that mirrored the mood of the town. He wasn't from Willow Creek. That was immediately obvious. The local boys were all rough around the edges, their hands calloused from working the land, their faces tanned by the sun. They moved with a certain swagger, a confidence born of knowing everyone and everything in their small world. Elias was different. He wore a uniform, but it wasn't crisp and new like the ones in the recruitment posters. It was faded, worn, as if it had seen its share of hardship. He stood straighter than any of the boys I knew. His shoulders squared, his chin lifted. There was a quiet intensity about him, a stillness that seemed to radiate outward. He walked into the general store, and the air seemed to thicken. Mrs. Peterson, who usually had a smile for everyone, simply stared, her hand frozen halfway to the tickle jar. Even old Mr. Abernathy, who was usually lost in his own world, looked up from his checkerboard, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. I was standing by the window, pretending to read a magazine, but really, I was watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon light. When he walked in, I felt a jolt, a strange flutter in my chest that I couldn't explain. He was striking. Not in the way the movie stars were striking, with their perfect smiles and polished charm. Elias had a different kind of beauty, a raw, almost unsettling kind. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, deep and shadowed, and his face was etched with lines that spoke of experiences far beyond his years. He asked Mr. Peterson for directions to the old Miller farm, the one that had been abandoned for years. His voice was low and even, with a hint of something I couldn't quite place. A foreign accent, perhaps, or simply a different way of speaking. Mr. Peterson gave him the directions, his voice gruff. He didn't offer a smile, didn't ask any questions, just pointed him down the road and turned back to his ledger. Elias nodded, thanked him politely, and turned to leave. As he passed the window, his eyes met mine. It was just for a fleeting moment, but it felt like an eternity. He didn't smile, didn't say anything, just looked at me, his eyes searching, almost questioning. And then he was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before. I didn't see him again for several days, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why was he here? And why did he choose to stay in the Miller farm, a place that everyone in Willow Creek avoided? The questions swirled in my mind, mixing with the anxieties about the war, creating a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. I learned through the gossiping grapevine of Willow Creek that Elias was a guest sent to help with the harvest. That was the official story anyway, but no one seemed to know who had sent him or why he had chosen Willow Creek. There were whispers, of course. Whispers about him being a deserter, a spy, a fugitive. Whispers that he was hiding from something or someone. I saw him again one evening, walking along the creek. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the water. He was alone, his head bowed, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked lost, vulnerable. I wanted to call out to him, to ask him about himself, to offer in some kind of comfort, but I couldn't. Something held me back, a sense of fear, perhaps. Or maybe it was something else, something more complicated, a feeling that he was carrying a burden too heavy for me to share. He stopped by the creek and looked at the water. He stood there for a long time, unmoving. Then he pulled something out of his pocket, a small silver object. I couldn't see what it was from where I stood, but it glinted in the fading light. He held it in his hand for a moment, then tossed it into the creek. The splash was barely audible, but it seemed to echo in the silence of the evening. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Elias standing by the creek, throwing something away, haunted me. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he was more than just a guest. He was a secret, a danger. And somehow I knew that our lives were about to become intertwined in ways that I couldn't even begin to imagine. The world was changing, and Elias was the harbinger of that change. The first crack in the facade of our peaceful, innocent lives. He was a sign that the war wasn't just a distant rumble anymore. It was here, in Willow Creek, in our hearts, waiting to explode. And I, Aurora, was standing on the precipice, ready to fall. The scent of wood smoke and damp earth still clung to my shawl as I slipped out of the house. The moon a silver coin in the inky sky. Mama was asleep. A fragile peace settled on her face. I hated leaving her, even for a little while, but the yearning to see Elias had become a constant ache. We met in the shadowed copse of trees at the edge of the meadow. The same place we'd stolen our first hesitant kiss. He was there, a dark figure against the starlit field, his face etched with worry. The sight of him eased the knot in my stomach, but only slightly. "Aurora," he breathed, pulling me close. His embrace was a haven, a brief respite from the encroaching darkness. "I needed to see you." I leaned into him, savoring the familiar comfort of his arms. "And I you." But the words fell hollow. The air crackled with unspoken fears. We couldn't pretend anymore that our little world was untouched. The war was seeping into Willow Creek like a poison. He pulled back, his bleak eyes searching mine. "I'd have something to tell you," he said, his voice low and strained. He led me to a fallen log, and we sat, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets. He took my hands, his grip firm, and began to speak. His name wasn't really Elias Muller. He was Karl Hoffman, a physicist who had been working for the German government on the top-secret project. He had seen the direction they were heading, the monstrous potential of their discoveries, and he couldn't be a part of it. So he deserted, risking everything to escape with a secret, the knowledge of an encryption device, something of immense power that could fall into the wrong hands. My mentor, a brilliant clockmaker named Herr Schmidt, helped me. He knew what I had to do. He entrusted me with clues, a riddle to find the device. He hid it somewhere safe, somewhere no one would think to look. He paused, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. He died a few months ago, supposedly of pneumonia. But I suspect he trailed off, his voice heavy with grief and suspicion. "And you think this device is here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded. "The clues lead me here, to Willow Creek. But I need your help, Aurora. I can't do this alone." My heart pounded in my chest. I was a simple village girl. What did I know about secrets and encryption devices and Nazi plots? But looking into his earnest, desperate eyes, I knew I couldn't refuse. My love for him demanded it. Over the next few days, we met in secret, poring over Herr Schmidt's cryptic notes. They were filled with clockwork diagrams, obscure biblical references, and fragments of poetry. Elias, with his scientific mind, and I, with my knowledge of local history and lore, worked together, piecing together the puzzle. Meanwhile, a subtle unease settled over Willow Creek. Strangers arrived, their faces hard, their eyes cold. They asked questions about the church, about the old clock tower. They seemed to be everywhere, their presence a constant, unnerving weight. Mrs. Gable, the baker, whispered that she saw them snooping around the cemetery. Old man Emlock grumbled about them at the general store. The fear was palpable, a creeping vine strangling the life out of our peaceful village. One evening, as I was helping Mama with the mending, a shadow fell across the doorway. It was Mr. Schmidt, the new schoolteacher, his smile too wide, his eyes too bright. He asked about Elias, feigning casual interest. "Just curious," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "He seems like such an interesting man. Where does he come from, do you know?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I stammered, making up a story about him being a traveling salesman, selling farm equipment. Mr. Schmidt's smile didn't waver, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, thank you, Aurora," he said, tipping his hat. "You've been most helpful." After he left, Mama looked at me, her eyes filled with concern. "Aurora, what's going on? You seem so different." I couldn't tell her the truth. "Not yet. It would put her in danger." "Nothing, Mama," I lied. "I'm just tired." That night, the diary felt heavier in my hands than ever before. I poured out my fears, my anxieties, my love for Elias, my growing realization that I was no longer just Aurora, the village girl. I was something else now. Something stronger, something more. "My dearest diary," I wrote. "The world is changing, and I am changing with it. I am afraid, terribly afraid, but I am also excited. Is that possible? To feel fear and excitement at the same time? Elias believes in me. He sees something in me that I didn't know existed. He needs me, and I need him. I will protect him, even if it means risking everything." A breakthrough came late one night, fueled by strong coffee and a shared sense of desperation. Elias pointed to a seemingly random sequence of numbers in Herr Schmidt's notes, a series of dates and times. "These aren't random," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "They're coordinates, clock coordinates, the position of the hands on the clock tower at specific times." The clock tower. It had been built centuries ago, a silent sentinel overlooking Willow Creek. I had climbed it as a child, daring myself to look down at the dizzying drop. It was said that the original clockmaker, a reclusive genius, had built secret compartments into the mechanism. "But the clock hasn't worked in years," I said, my voice trembling. "It's broken." "That's what they want us to think," Elias said, his eyes shining with determination. "Come on, we have to go." Under the cloak of darkness, we made our way to the church. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp stone. The clock tower loomed above us, a dark, silent giant. Elias produced a set of lockpicks from his pocket, tools he had learned to use during his escape. He worked quickly and efficiently, and soon we were inside, climbing the creaking wooden stairs. The clock mechanism was a tangle of gears and levers, covered in dust and cobwebs. It was clear that it hadn't been touched in decades, but Elias, with his knowledge of physics and mechanics, quickly identified the relevant parts. He manipulated the levers, following the sequence of numbers from Herr Schmidt's notes. With a loud click, a section of the clock face swung open, revealing a narrow passage. It led downwards, into the darkness. We exchanged a nervous glance. Then Elias lit a small lamp, and we stepped into the unknown. The passage sloped downwards, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. The air grew colder, the silence more profound. We moved slowly, cautiously, our senses on high alert. Finally, the passage opened into a small circular chamber. In the center stood a stone pedestal, and on the pedestal, resting beneath a glass dome, was a small, intricately crafted metal box, the artifact. As Elias reached for it, the voice shattered the silence. "Don't move." Standing in the doorway, bathed in the flickering lamplight, was Mr. Schmidt, the the schoolteacher. In his hand, he held a pistol. And behind him, two more figures emerged from the shadows, their faces grim, their eyes filled with menace. "We've been expecting you, Herr Hoffman," Mr. Schmidt said, his voice cold and devoid of any warmth. Or should I say, Dr. Hoffman. My blood ran cold. We were trapped, and the game had just begun. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that everything had changed. I was no longer just a witness. I was a player, and the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. I knew I had to protect Elias, but I also knew I had to protect my family, my village, from the evil that had slithered into our peaceful world. I had to be brave. But how? The final lock clicked open with a sound like a sigh, releasing a breath held for centuries. Elias, his face illuminated by the flickering lamplight, reached for the heavy oak door. It groaned in protest as we pushed it inward, revealing a chamber bathed in an unnatural stillness. The air was thick with the scent of dust and something else, something metallic and ancient. It's here," Elias whispered, his voice hushed with reverence. The chamber was small, barely larger than a parlor. Stone walls, etched with symbols I couldn't decipher, curved inward to meet a low vaulted ceiling. In the center, resting on a simple stone pedestal, was the clockwork device. It wasn't as large as I'd imagined, perhaps the size of a small music box. But even in the dim light, I could see the intricate gears, the delicate springs, the gleaming brass polished smooth by countless hands. It hummed faintly, a subtle vibration that resonated in my chest. Elias moved forward, his hand outstretched. I watched him, my heart pounding against my ribs, a mixture of hope and dread swirling within me. He reached the pedestal, his fingers hovering above the device. "Careful," I breathed. He smiled, a reassuring flicker in the lamplight. "Always, Aurora." He gently lifted the device. The humming intensified, filling the chamber with a low, resonant drone. The shadows danced on the walls, and I felt a strange tingling sensation in my fingertips. Then the world exploded. A deafening crash echoed through the chamber, followed by the sharp crackle of gunfire. The door we had just opened splintered inward, showering us with wood and stone. Nazi soldiers, their faces grim and determined, swarmed into the room, their weapons raised. "Get down," Elias shouted, shoving me behind the pedestal. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the roar of gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off the stone walls, sending sparks flying. I huddled behind the pedestal, my hands clamped over my ears, my eyes squeezed shut. Elias, with a bravery I hadn't known he possessed, threw himself in front of me, shielding me from the onslaught. He returned fire with his small pistol, his movements quick and precise. But they were too many, their weapons too powerful. I risked a glance, my heart seizing in my chest. Elias was bleeding, a dark stain spreading across his shoulder. He stumbled, but he kept firing, his face contorted with pain and determination. "Aurora, run," he yelled, his voice hoarse. "Get out of here. Take it." He thrust the clockwork device into my hands. It was warm, almost burning against my skin. I clutched it tightly, my fingers digging into its intricate surface. "I can't leave you," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "You have to," he insisted, his eyes pleading. "This is bigger than us, Aurora. You have to protect it." Another soldier charged forward, his bayonet glinting in the lamplight. Elias lunged, tackling him to the ground, giving me a precious few seconds. "Go," he screamed, "now." I didn't want to leave him. I wanted to stay and fight, to somehow save him. But I knew he was right. This was bigger than us. I had to protect the device. I had to honor his sacrifice. With a sob, I turned and fled. I knew the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the church better than anyone. It was a skill I had always dismissed, a trick of memory and a strange comfort I found in the cool stone. Now, it was life. I ran blindly, my feet pounding against the cold stone floor. The sounds of gunfire and shouting echoed behind me, growing fainter as I navigated the twisting passages. I stumbled and fell, scraping my knees and elbows, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I followed the familiar turns, the secret passages I had discovered as a child, my mind racing, my heart breaking. I knew they would be searching for me, but I also knew that they wouldn't know the tunnels as well as I did. Finally, I reached the hidden exit, the one Elias and I had planned as a last resort. It was a narrow opening concealed behind a loose stone in the old wine cellar. I squeezed through, emerging into the cool night air. I stood there for a moment, gasping for breath, my body trembling. The church loomed above me, a dark silhouette against the starry sky. I could still hear the distant sounds of gunfire, a chilling reminder of what I had left behind. Elias. He was gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. He was gone, and I was alone. I sank to my knees, the clockwork device clutched tightly in my hand. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging in the cold night air. I had never felt so lost, so broken. But even in my grief, I knew I couldn't stay there. I had a mission, a purpose. Elias had entrusted me with something precious, something important. I couldn't let him down. I stood up, my legs shaky, my body aching. I looked at the clockwork device in my hand, its intricate gears gleaming in the moonlight. It was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of hope, a symbol of resistance, a symbol of Elias's love. And it was my responsibility now. I started to walk, my steps slow and hesitant at first, but growing stronger with each stride. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. I had to find a way to protect the device, to honor Elias's sacrifice, to fight for the future he had believed in. That night, I began writing in this diary. It wasn't just a record of events. It was a way to keep Elias alive, to remember his voice, his smile, his unwavering courage. It was a way to process my grief, to make sense of the chaos, to find strength in the face of despair. The first entry was shaky, barely legible through my tears. I wrote about Elias, about his kindness, his intelligence, his unwavering belief in the good in humanity. I wrote about the clockwork device, about its intricate beauty, its mysterious purpose. I wrote about my fear, my grief, my determination. And as I wrote, I began to feel a shift within me. The grief was still there, a heavy weight in my chest, but it was no longer all-consuming. A new feeling was emerging, a feeling of purpose, of resolve. I was no longer just Aurora. I was Aurora, entrusted with a mission, carrying a legacy. I was Aurora, the keeper of the clockwork device, the protector of hope. I understood then that Elias's sacrifice had not been in vain. He had given me something more than just a device. He had given me a reason to live, a reason to fight, and I wouldn't let him down. The days that followed were a blur of fear and uncertainty. I moved from place to place, never staying in one location for too long. I relied on the kindness of strangers, people who saw the desperation in my eyes and offered me shelter and food. I learned to trust my instincts, to be wary of everyone, to always be prepared to run. I studied the clockwork device, trying to understand its secrets. I consulted with scholars and historians, seeking any clue that could shed light on its purpose, but no one seemed to know anything about it. It was as if it had been erased from history, deliberately hidden from the world. The diary became my constant companion, my confidant, my anchor. I wrote in it every night, recording my experiences, my thoughts, my fears. It was the only way I could keep myself sane, the only way I could hold on to my memories of Elias. And as I wrote, I began to realize that the clockwork device was more than just a physical object. It was a key to unlocking something important, something that could change the course of history. But what that something was, I didn't yet know. All I knew was that I had to protect it, no matter the cost. I had to honor Elias's sacrifice. I had to carry on his legacy. And so I continued my journey, driven by grief, fueled by determination, and guided by the faint hope that one day I would understand the true purpose of the clockwork device, and that I would be able to use it to make the world a better place. This is the story, my darling. The story of how a young girl became a woman, forged in the fires of war and loss, a story of love, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope. And it is a story that is far from over. For the clockwork device and the secrets it holds are still waiting to be revealed. And it is my hope that one day you will be the one to unlock them. The stone bit into my hands as I pulled myself free, the labyrinth spitting me out like a bad taste. My breath hitched, ragged and raw, each inhale a reminder of the dust and the dark and the gone. He was gone. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Every scrape of my shoes on the path home was a betrayal, a footstep further away from where he lay. The adrenaline, that icy fire that had burned through me only moments before, flickered and died, leaving behind a cold ash. The house loomed, a familiar silhouette against the paling sky. It should have been a sanctuary, a haven. Instead, it felt like a stage. I fumbled with the keys, the metal cold and slick in my trembling hands. Inside, everything was as it should be. The scent of lemon polish, the soft ticking of the grandmother clock in the hall, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Normal, a word that had become a cruel joke. I went straight to my room, collapsing onto the bed without bothering to take off my shoes. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. It wasn't the absence of noise, but the absence of him. His laugh, the way he hummed off-key while he worked, the gentle creak of his chair as he read, all gone, replaced by this hollow echo that resonated in my bones. I avoided the mirror. I knew what I would see. A stranger staring back, eyes haunted, skin pale, the ghost of the labyrinth clinging to me like a shroud. I didn't want to see the truth etched on my face. Not yet. For hours, I lay there, unmoving, the artifact a heavy weight in my pocket. It pulsed with a faint warmth, a silent promise I couldn't decipher. It was a burden now, a constant reminder of the price that had been paid. When I finally moved, it was to retrieve the diary from its hiding place under the floorboards. The leather felt cold beneath my fingers. I hesitated, my throat tight. It had been our shared space, a place where we could be honest, vulnerable. Now it felt tainted, stained with the last words he would ever write. But I opened it anyway. The pages were filled with his familiar scrawl, a chaotic mix of research notes, sketches, and personal reflections. I traced his handwriting with my finger, each stroke a phantom touch. Tears blurred the ink, making the words swim. I wrote, finally, not with elegance, not with any semblance of composure. Just raw, broken fragments of grief, anger, despair. I filled the pages with the unvarnished truth, the once a desperate attempt to claw my way back to reality. He's gone. He's really gone. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some tragic misstep. He sacrificed himself. They'll say he was brave. They'll say he was a hero. But he was so much more than that. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to live without him. The words offered no comfort, no solace. But they were there, on the page, solid and real. A testament to the unbearable weight I now carried. The next few days were a blur. The funeral, the condolences, the well-meaning but empty platitudes. I moved through it all like a ghost, detached, numb. Everyone kept telling me how strong I was, how well I was handling things. They didn't see the cracks, the fissures that ran deep beneath the surface. They didn't see the rage that simmered beneath my grief, a dark, volatile thing that threatened to consume me. I played the part they expected, the grieving widow, the stoic matriarch. I smiled weakly, nodded politely, and swallowed the truth whole. It tasted like ash. The official story was simple. Elias had been exploring an old cave system when a tunnel collapsed, a tragic accident. No one questioned it. No one suspected the truth. The artifact remained hidden, tucked away in the safest place I could think of. But even buried deep, I felt its pull, its silent hum. It was a constant reminder of the world beyond, the world Elias had dedicated his life to protecting, and now, the world I had inherited. Sleep offered little respite. Nightmares plagued me, vivid and terrifying. I relived the labyrinth, the darkness, the moment each night a fresh wave of grief crashing over me. I would wake up gasping, heart pounding, the silence of the house amplifying my terror. I started noticing things, shadows that seemed to linger a moment too long, whispers in the wind, a sense of being watched. I dismissed them as the product of my grief-addled mind, but the feeling persisted, a prickling unease that settled deep in my bones. One afternoon, while sorting through Elias's belongings, I found a hidden compartment in his desk. Inside, a small leather-bound notebook. It was filled with his familiar handwriting, but the entries were different, coded. filled with symbols and cryptic phrases. My heart quickened. This wasn't just research. This was something more. Something secret. I spent hours poring over the notebook, trying to decipher its secrets. It was slow, painstaking work. But with each decoded phrase, a new piece of the puzzle fell into place. I began to understand the scope of what Elias had been investigating, the depth of the darkness he had been fighting. And I began to understand what I had to do. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't about retribution. It was about honoring his memory, about protecting the world from the forces he had dedicated his life to fighting. It was about carrying on his legacy. The grief was still there, a constant ache in my heart, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was a fuel, a source of strength. It wouldn't consume me, but propel me forward. I started small, a trip to the local library, searching for obscure texts on ancient mythology and folklore. Late nights spent poring over maps, tracing ley lines and forgotten pathways. I was still grieving, still broken, but I was no longer adrift. I was finding my purpose. One night, long after everyone else was asleep, I crept into Elias's old study. The room was filled with his presence, his scent lingering in the air. I ran my hand over his desk, his books, his maps. It felt like he was still there, watching over me. I opened his notebook again, focusing on a particular symbol that had been recurring throughout his entries. A serpent coiled around the fort. A symbol of protection, a symbol of power. And then I saw it. A tiny, almost imperceptible inscription beneath the symbol. The single word, Aurora. The name sent a shiver down my spine. It was a message from him, a beacon in the darkness, a confirmation that I was on the right path. I closed the notebook, clutching it to my chest. The grief was still there, but it was mingled with something else. A sense of resolve, a flicker of hope. I was still terrified, but I was no longer alone. Elias was with me, in the diary, in the artifact, in the very air I breathed. And I would not let him down. The world was changing. I could feel it. The shadows were growing longer. The whispers louder. The darkness was closing in. But I was ready. I was Aurora, and I would not give up. Clears the air, adjusts her shawl, and settles back in her rocking chair. Willow Creek, bless its sleepy heart, couldn't hold me anymore. It was like trying to keep a caged bird. The air itself felt thick with memories of Elias. Every cobblestone whispering his name, every corner reflecting his smile. Staying there would have been a slow, agonizing fade, a surrender to the grief that threatened to swallow me whole. So, with a heavy heart and a suitcase filled with more hope and sense, I left. I chose Philadelphia. It wasn't too close, not too far. A city teeming with life, a place where a young woman with a borrowed name could disappear into the crowd. I found a small room above a bakery in a neighborhood that smelled perpetually of cinnamon and coal smoke. It wasn't much, just a bed, a small table, and a chipped wash basin. But it was mine. A sanctuary of sorts. The money Elias had left me, bless his soul, wouldn't last forever. I took a job at the local library, shelving books, inhaling the scent of aged paper and ink. It was a quiet job, a solitary job, which suited me just fine. It gave me time to think, to plan, to study. Elias's diary became my constant companion. His neat, precise handwriting, filled with sketches, diagrams, and cryptic notes about the artifact. He called it the Weaver, the device capable of unraveling the most complex codes, of seeing patterns where others saw chaos. But it was more than just an encryption tool, I soon discovered. It was a window into the enemy's mind, a way to anticipate their moves, to understand their strategies. I spent hours in the library after my shift, poring over books on cryptography, history, linguistics, anything that might shed light on the Weaver's true potential. I learned about the Enigma machine, about the Navajo code talkers, about the ancient art of steganography. I felt like a student again, only this time the stakes were much higher than a passing grade. I wasn't alone in my pursuit. The Nazis were still out there, their tendrils reaching across continents, desperate to reclaim what they had lost. I knew they would be looking for me, for the artifact. So, I learned to be invisible. I changed my appearance, my habits, my very demeanor. I observed. I listened. I became a shadow, a ghost in the city. I started small, learning to blend in with the crowds, to avoid eye contact, to recognize subtle signs of surveillance. I practiced memorizing license plates, identifying different makes and models of cars, noticing the way people moved, the way they dressed, the way they spoke. One afternoon, while walking home from the library, I noticed a man following me. He was tall, with a severe face and eyes that seemed to bore right through me. He kept a discreet distance, but I could feel his presence like a weight on my back. I ducked into a crowded market, weaving through the stalls filled with fruit and vegetables, the air thick with the smells of spices and roasting meat. I doubled back, changed direction, and lost him in the maze of narrow streets. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, a constant reminder of the danger that surrounded me. I knew I couldn't afford to be complacent. I needed to be smarter, faster, more resourceful. I began to frequent the local pawn shops, picking up discarded radios and electronic arts. I taught myself how to solder, how to wire circuits, how to build simple listening devices. I learned to tap into phone lines, to intercept radio signals, to decipher Morse code. It was all rudimentary, of course, but it gave me a sense of control, a feeling that I wasn't entirely helpless. The Weaver, meanwhile, was proving to be more than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about breaking codes. It was about understanding the logic behind them, about anticipating the enemy's next move. I started feeding it information, snippets of overheard conversations, fragments of intercepted messages, details gleaned from newspaper articles. The Weaver, in turn, would analyze the data, identify patterns, and provide me with insights that I never could have found on my own. It was a lonely existence, living in the shadows, always looking over my shoulder. I missed Elias terribly. I missed his laughter, his warmth, his unwavering optimism. Sometimes, at night, I would take out his diary and read his words, just to hear his voice again. But I knew I couldn't give up. I had a responsibility to protect the Weaver, to keep it out of the hands of the Nazis. It was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of hope, a tool that could help us win the war. And Elias, I knew, would have wanted me to see it through. One evening, while working on a particularly complex code, I made a breakthrough. The Weaver identified a pattern, a repeating sequence that seemed to point to a planned attack on a nearby naval base. I immediately contacted the authorities, providing them with the information. And first they were skeptical, dismissing me as a crazy woman with a wild imagination. But I persisted, explaining the logic behind the Weaver's analysis, showing them the evidence I had gathered. Finally, they agreed to investigate. They discovered that the Nazis were indeed planning an attack, using a network of sleeper agents and coded messages to coordinate their efforts. The attack was averted, thanks to the Weaver and my relentless pursuit. That night, I allowed myself a small smile. It was a victory, a small step in the right direction. But I knew the war was far from over. The Nazis were still out there, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. And I knew, deep down, that they would be coming for me again. I continued to learn, to adapt, to grow stronger. I became a student of human nature, a master of disguise, a silent observer of the world around me. I was no longer the naive young woman who had left Willow Creek. I was Aurora, the guardian of the Weaver, the protector of a secret that could change the course of history. The loneliness was still there, a constant ache in my heart, but it was tempered by a sense of purpose, a feeling that I was doing something important, something that Elias would have been proud of. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. Grandma Aurora pauses, takes a sip of tea, and her eyes gleam with a quiet determination. The city, you see, became my classroom. The streets, my training ground. And the constant fear? Well, that was just the price of admission to a world I never asked to join, but one I knew I couldn't leave. It was a terrifying creature, always lurking in the shadows, but it also forged me into something more, something I never knew I could be. The old music box sat on my lap, its rosewood surface smooth and cool beneath my fingertips. I lifted the lid, and the familiar tinkling melody of Clair de Lune filled the room, a tune that always seemed to carry a whisper of sadness, a hint of something unspoken. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay the artifact, Elias's compass. It wasn't just a navigational tool. It was a key, a silent witness to a life lived on the edge of history. The diary had revealed so much, and as I held the compass, the final pieces of Grandma Aurora's story began to fall into place, illuminating the path that led her from a young woman entangled in the war to the serene, knowing presence I had always cherished. The diary entries from those final years of the war were filled with a frenetic energy, a desperate urgency that mirrored the escalating conflict. Aurora had become a vital conduit, using the compass to intercept and transmit information. She'd learned to decipher coded messages hidden within seemingly innocuous radio broadcasts. Her small room above the bakery transformed into a clandestine hub of Allied intelligence. Each successful transmission was a victory, a small crack in the armor of the enemy, but each also carried the weight of knowing that lives depended on her accuracy, on her unwavering dedication. I remember one passage in particular, written in a shaky hand, detailing a night when a convoy of enemy ships was scheduled to sail through a specific channel. Aurora, using the compass and a complex system of calculations she painstakingly developed, pinpointed the exact location and time. The information was relayed, and the convoy was intercepted, a crucial blow that disrupted enemy supply lines. She wrote of the agonizing weight, the gnawing anxiety, the fear that she might be wrong, that her calculations might be off, the relief that washed over her when the news finally arrived. The confirmation of success was palpable even decades later as I read her words. But that relief was always tinged with sorrow, with the understanding that such victories came at a cost. The diary also recounted the constant fear of discovery. The Gestapo's presence in the village grew ever more menacing, their shadow looming over every aspect of life. Aurora lived with a perpetual knot in her stomach, knowing that a single slip-up could mean not only her own capture, but also the exposure of the entire network she was working with. She developed a series of intricate routines, a dance of deception, designed to conceal her activities from prying eyes. She'd spend hours baking bread, the aroma filling the air, providing a plausible explanation for the late hours and the occasional comings and goings of strangers. She learned to read faces, to discern the subtle cues that betrayed suspicion. Yet, amidst the fear and the danger, there were moments of quiet triumph, of profound connection. She wrote of the camaraderie she shared with the other members of the resistance, the silent understanding that bound them together in their shared purpose. She spoke of the courage and resilience of the villagers, their unwavering spirit in the face of adversity. And she wrote, always, of Elias, of the love that sustained her, the memory that fueled her determination. Then, finally, the entries began to reflect the shift, a subtle change in tone. The tide of the war was turning. The Allied forces were advancing, pushing back the enemy on all fronts. The diary entries became less frequent, the urgency replaced by a growing sense of hope, a cautious optimism that dared to believe in the possibility of peace. The day the war ended was etched in her memory, a day of overwhelming joy and profound relief. She described the eruption of celebrations in the village, the church bells ringing, the flags waving, the tears streaming down faces. But amidst the jubilation, there was also a deep exhaustion, a weariness that settled into her bones. The years of fear, of sacrifice, of constant vigilance had taken their toll. She felt a profound sense of loss, not just for those who had perished, but also for the life she had lived during the war, a life defined by danger and secrecy. The diary fell silent for a time after that. Weeks, then months passed without an entry. When she finally wrote again, it was with a different voice, a voice that spoke of healing, of rebuilding, of finding a new purpose. She wrote of returning to Willow Creek, the small village where she had spent her childhood. She found solace in the familiar landscapes, in the gentle rhythm of rural life. She helped rebuild the village school, teaching children the importance of history and the value of peace. She volunteered at the local hospital, tending to the wounded soldiers returning from the front lines. She used her knowledge of herbal remedies to heal the sick and ease the suffering. Aurora dedicated herself to healing, both physical and emotional. She understood the deep scars that the war had left on individuals and communities, and she poured her energy into helping others find their way back to wholeness. She became a pillar of the community, the source of strength and wisdom for those who had lost so much. She never forgot Elias. His memory remained a constant presence in her life, a guiding light that shaped her decisions and inspired her actions. She kept the compass, the artifact that had connected them, as a tangible reminder of their love and their sacrifice. She understood that their love had not been in vain, that it had played a part, however small, in the larger struggle for freedom and justice. Slowly, over time, Aurora transformed. The young woman hardened by war softened, her face etched with lines of wisdom and compassion. The fear that had haunted her eyes receded, replaced by a gentle serenity. She became the Grandma Aurora I knew and loved, the woman who radiated warmth and understanding, the woman who always had a kind word and a comforting embrace. I remember sitting on her porch as a child, listening to her stories, oblivious to the extraordinary life she had lived. She rarely spoke of the war, preferring to focus on the simple joys of everyday life. The beauty of the wildflowers, the songs of the birds, the laughter of children. But sometimes, late at night, when the moon was full, I would catch a glimpse of something in her eyes, a flicker of sadness, a hint of a past that she kept carefully guarded. Now, reading her diary, I finally understood the depth of that past, the extraordinary courage and sacrifice that had shaped her into the woman she became. I understood the sadness that lingered beneath her smile, the weight of memories that she carried within her heart. She never remarried. Elias was her one true love, a love that transcended time and circumstance. She honored his memory by living a life of purpose and service, by dedicating herself to creating a better world for future generations. The compass, now nestled back in its velvet bed, felt warm to the touch, as if it still held a spark of Elias' spirit. It was more than just an artifact. It was a symbol of love, of sacrifice, of resilience. It was a testament to the extraordinary life of Grandma Aurora, a life lived in the shadow of war, but ultimately defined by love, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to peace. As the music box played on, filling the room with its melancholic melody, I closed my eyes and imagined Aurora, young and vibrant, standing beside Elias, their faces illuminated by the moonlight. I saw them laughing, dancing, dreaming of the future that they knew might never come. And I understood, finally, that their love, their sacrifice, had not been in vain. It had helped to shape a better world, a world where hope could triumph over despair, where love could conquer hate, where even the smallest act of courage could make a difference. Grandma Aurora's diary wasn't just a record of her past. It was a legacy, a gift to me, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure, that love can prevail, and that even the most ordinary person can be capable of extraordinary things. And as the last notes of Claire de Lune faded away, I knew that I would carry her story with me always, a beacon of hope and inspiration in a world that so desperately needed both. The music box closed with a soft click, sealing the compass and its secrets once more. But the story, the truth of Aurora's life, would remain open in my heart forever. The diary lay open on the worn oak table, bathed in the soft, late afternoon light that streamed through the kitchen window. It wasn't just paper and ink anymore. It was a portal, a tangible connection to Aurora, to the grandmother I thought I knew so well, but whose depths I had only begun to fathom. The silence in the room was profound, a comfortable quiet filled not with absence, but with the echoes of her laughter, her anxieties, her hopes, and her unwavering spirit. I traced the delicate swirls of her handwriting, each letter a testament to her enduring presence. Closing the diary that final time felt different. It wasn't setting away a secret, but rather carefully tucking away a treasure. The weight of it in my hands was lighter now, not because the secrets it held were less significant, but because I understood them. I understood her, the fear that had haunted the edges of her words, the resilience that shone through in her actions, the quiet determination that had fueled her life. It all resonated within me now, a symphony of shared humanity. The stories she had told me as a child, the fantastical tales of brave knights and mischievous sprites, of enchanted forests and hidden kingdoms, suddenly bloomed with new meaning. They weren't just bedtime stories, whimsical distractions meant to lull me to sleep. They were parables, veiled lessons drawn from the well of her own experiences. The night facing the dragon was not so different from Aurora facing the hardships life had thrown her way. The enchanted forest, with its winding paths and hidden dangers, mirrored the uncertain terrain she had navigated with such grace. The mischievous sprites, perhaps, were the embodiment of the joy she found in the small, everyday moments, a reminder to find laughter even in the face of adversity. I remembered her voice, soft and melodic, as she spun those tales. I remembered the way her eyes twinkled with amusement, the gentle pressure of her hand in mine. Now I realized that she wasn't just telling me stories. She was imparting wisdom, embedding life lessons into the fabric of my childhood, preparing me in her own subtle way for the challenges that lay ahead. She wasn't just a grandmother, she was a guide, a mentor, a silent guardian angel whispering encouragement into my ear. The artifacts I had uncovered, the faded photographs, the antique locket, the worn leather gloves, were no longer mere objects. They were tangible reminders of a life lived fully, a life marked by both joy and sorrow, by love and loss, by courage and fear. They were fragments of a larger mosaic, each piece contributing to a richer, more complex portrait of the woman I had always admired, but now understood on a deeper, more profound level. Aurora's true legacy wasn't buried in secrets, nor etched in stone. It wasn't confined to the pages of a forgotten diary or hidden within the walls of her old house. Her legacy lived on in the stories she told, in the values she instilled, in the love she shared. It lived on in the way she faced adversity with unwavering resolve, in the way she found beauty in the simplest of things, in the way she embraced life with open arms, even when it threatened to overwhelm her. I thought of my own life, of the challenges I had faced, of the moments when I had felt lost and alone. And I realized that Aurora's story wasn't just about her past, it was about my present and my future. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always resilience, always the possibility of finding strength within ourselves. Her experiences, her struggles, her triumphs, they were a roadmap, a source of inspiration, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Perhaps that was why she had kept the diary hidden for so long. Not to conceal the truth, but to protect it, to preserve it until the time was right, until someone was ready to receive it, to understand it, to learn from it. And now, that time had come. I was ready. The emotional release was cathartic. It wasn't a flood of tears, but a gentle rain of understanding. A quiet acceptance of the past and a renewed sense of purpose for the future. The weight on my chest lifted, replaced by a feeling of lightness, of freedom. I felt connected to Aurora in a way I never had before. Bound by a shared history, a shared humanity, a shared love. I thought of all the things she had taught me, both directly and indirectly, through her words and through her actions. The importance of kindness, of compassion, of empathy, the value of hard work, of perseverance, of never giving up on your dreams, the beauty of nature, the power of art, the joy of human connection. These were the lessons that she had woven into the fabric of my being, the values that had shaped me into the person I am today. And now I understood that it was my responsibility to carry on her legacy, to pass on her wisdom, to share her story with the world, not just the secrets she had kept hidden in her diary, but the essence of her being, the spirit of her soul, to tell the story of a woman who had faced adversity with courage, who had found joy in the simplest of things, who had loved unconditionally, and who had left an indelible mark on the world. The diary, I realized, was more than just a collection of words on paper. It was a testament to the power of storytelling, to the importance of preserving our memories, of honoring our ancestors, of sharing our experiences with future generations. It was a reminder that we are all connected, that our lives are intertwined, that the stories of the past have the power to shape the present and to inspire the future. Closing the diary one last time, I felt a profound sense of peace. The circle was complete. The secrets were revealed. The truth was known. And Aurora's story, her extraordinary life, would live on, not just in my memory, but in the hearts and minds of all those who would hear it. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. The room was filled with a soft golden light, a gentle reminder of Aurora's warmth and her enduring presence. I stood up, stretched my arms, and took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the crisp evening air. I felt renewed, invigorated, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As I walked out of the kitchen, I glanced back at the table, at the diary lying open in the fading light. It wasn't just a book anymore. It was a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the enduring power of love. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found, always strength to be discovered, always a story to be told. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that Aurora's story would continue to be told for generations to come. It was a story that deserved to be shared, a story that needed to be heard, a story that would inspire others to live their lives with courage, with compassion, and with unwavering hope. The diary, now a cherished guide, would be kept safe, a legacy for my own children and their children after them. It was a map not just to Aurora's life, but to a deeper understanding of what it means to be human, to love, to lose, and to persevere. And perhaps within its pages, future generations would find the courage to unlock their own hidden stories and to share them with the world, creating a ripple effect of understanding, compassion, and connection that would extend far beyond our small corner of the universe. The true terror, I realized, wasn't in the creatures of the night, but in the silence that keeps us from sharing our truths, from connecting with each other on a deeper level. Aurora's diary had broken that silence, and in doing so, had illuminated a path towards healing, understanding, and enduring love. The journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. My dears, as the last embers of the hearth glow softly, casting long shadows that dance like memories, let us hold close the story of Aurora, a woman whose life, like a hidden garden, blossomed even in the most unforgiving terrain. Her story, etched not in stone, but in the whispers of the wind and the quiet rustle of old labor, is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, the unwavering power of love, and the profound resilience that lies dormant within each of us, waiting to be awakened. Aurora's existence was not one of grand pronouncements or sweeping gestures, but rather a quiet symphony of small acts of courage, of sacrifices made with a gentle hand, and a love that burned with a fierce, protective flame. She faced shadows that threatened to consume her, a creature born of nightmare and fear. Yet she stood firm, her heart a beacon in the encroaching darkness. She protected those she held dear, shielding them from the storm with a resolve that surprised even herself. Think of the worn pages of her diary, each entry a testament to her unwavering spirit. They weren't filled with complaints or despair, but with observations, with quiet reflections on the beauty she found even amidst the ugliness, on the hope she clung to when the world seemed determined to snuff it out. She found solace in the blooming of a single flower, in the laughter of children playing in the square, in the shared stories whispered around a crackling fire. These small moments, these fragments of joy, were the threads that wove together the beautiful, albeit sometimes sorrowful, fabric of her life. Remember the fear that gnawed at her, the constant awareness of the presence lurking just beyond the edge of the light. Imagine the weight of responsibility she carried, the knowledge that the safety of her loved ones rested squarely on her shoulders. Yet she never faltered. She embraced the challenge, drawing strength from the very people she sought to protect. Her love for them was the shield that deflected the darkness, the weapon that held the creature at bay. Aurora's love wasn't a loud, demonstrative affection. It was the quiet tending of wounds, the gentle hand that smoothed a furrowed brow, the unwavering presence that offered comfort and reassurance. It was the kind of love that asks for nothing in return, a love that nourishes and sustains, a love that transcends even the boundaries of life and death. And the creature, that embodiment of fear and darkness, was it real? Or was it a manifestation of the anxieties and uncertainties that plague us all? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was a reminder that even in the most ordinary of life, extraordinary battles can be fought, and that the greatest victories are often those won not with weapons, but with courage, compassion, and an unyielding belief in the power of good. If Aurora's story has resonated within you, if it has stirred something deep within your soul, then it has served its purpose. It is a story meant to be shared, a story meant to be carried forward like a precious ember, illuminating the path for others who may find themselves facing their own shadows. Stories like Aurora's do not simply end when the last word is read or the final scene fades. They live on in the hearts and minds of those who have heard them, inspiring them to be brave, to be kind, and to never give up hope, even when the darkness seems overwhelming. Consider the lessons Aurora's life imparted, the importance of cherishing the simple moments, the power of unwavering love, and the indomitable nature of the human spirit. Think about the secrets she guarded, not for the sake of concealment, but for the protection of those she loved. Consider the sacrifices she made, not out of obligation, but out of a deep and abiding sense of responsibility. And so, as we draw this tale to a close, I ask you to consider the echoes of Aurora's life in your own. Have you ever faced a seemingly insurmountable challenge? Have you ever felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon you? Have you ever found strength in the love of others, or discovered hidden reserves of courage within yourself? If Aurora's story has touched you, if it has moved you in any way, then please leave a like. It is a small gesture, but it signifies that her story has not been told in vain, that her life, though filled with hardship, has left an indelible mark on the world. And if you wish to hear more stories of courage, of love, and of resilience, then please subscribe to our channel. We believe that stories have the power to heal, to inspire, and to connect us to one another, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles, and that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. But more than likes or subscriptions, we yearn to hear your thoughts, your reflections on Aurora's life, your own experiences with fear and courage, your own stories of love and sacrifice. These are the things that truly matter. These are the threads that weave together the rich and complex tapestry of human experience. So please, share your thoughts below. Tell us what resonated with you most about Aurora's story. Tell us about a time when you faced your own creature and found the strength to overcome it. Tell us about the people who inspired you to be brave, to be kind, and to never give up hope. What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? Was it the memory of a lost love? Was it the unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity? Was it the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had protected those she loved, even at great personal cost? Share your thoughts and let us continue the conversation, keeping Aurora's legacy alive in our hearts and minds. Perhaps she held closest the sacred that we all possess, the capacity for both profound darkness and boundless light, the ability to be both vulnerable and strong, fearful and courageous, the understanding that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, love can endure, hope can persist, and the human spirit can triumph. Remember the image of Aurora, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a warrior of the heart. Remember her quiet strength, her unwavering love, and her indomitable spirit. Let her story be a reminder that even in the most ordinary of lives, extraordinary things can happen, and that the greatest power lies not in brute force, but in the quiet, persistent flame of the human heart. And as the shadows lengthen and the night deepens, let us carry forward Aurora's legacy, not as a burden, but as a beacon, guiding us through the darkness and reminding us that even in the face of fear, love and courage can always prevail. Let her story be a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can always be found, and that even the smallest acts of kindness can make a world of difference. So go forth, my dears, and live your lives with courage, with compassion, and with an unwavering belief in the power of love. And remember, always, the story of Grandma Aurora, the woman who faced her fears and emerged victorious, not because she was invincible, but because she refused to give up hope. Her story is a gift, a treasure to be cherished and shared, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of the human spirit can never be extinguished.